The Australian Financial Review.
Whether you're at home or in the office, high-stress situations can pop up anywhere.
It honestly doesn't matter whether it's the blocks of an Olympic final or a really intense conversation that I know I need to have. There's a level of anxiety about both of those things. And why is there? Because you don't necessarily know the outcome 100%.
Welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success, failure, and all the lessons learnt along the way. I'm your host, Sally Patton, and my guest today is champion swimmer Bronte Campbell, a 4-time Olympian, 3-time gold medalist, and the co-founder of Australian activewear brand Earthletica. Now, Bronte, we only have 15 minutes. Our time starts now. Let's get started with your morning routine. What time do you get up? Do you have breakfast? What happens?
I get up a bit later now than I used to. I get up about 6:30, and every morning I like to get in the ocean or get in the water in some way. I do typically have breakfast. Yeah, yogurt, oats, fruit, eggs, toast, whatever I've got time for, or honestly, whatever's in my fridge, and I can pull together in 15 minutes. And then after I've done a bit of movement, then I have my coffee. I don't like feeling like I rely on the caffeine to wake me up. Once I feel a bit awake, then I can sit down and enjoy that cup of coffee.
So do you think about protein and calcium and things like that when you are eating and eating breakfast in particular?
I think about setting up right for my day and like what fuel do I need to get through my day. Obviously, when I'm in a business environment, that's very different than when I'm in a sporting environment. And the temptation for me is to be like, I'm not having as big an energy out for the day when I'm not in a sporting environment, and therefore deprioritizing those things that I know make a big difference. Nutrition makes a big difference. It's the energy that runs your body. So what fuel do I need to put in to get through to the end of the day? And not necessarily just so that I can get through that day, it's so that you can get through the next week and the next month and the next 3 months. And it's the tiny things every day that end up making that difference.
Now, I'd like to talk about a pivotal moment in your career. Was there a pivotal moment, say a promotion that you were given, a project that you worked on, or something that happened that changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
It's a really interesting question. I think there's the pivotal moment in my swimming career actually came in the form of an obstacle. And that was serious shoulder injury that I sustained in 2016. And before that, I had a mindset of being very fixed and knowing what success looked like, and I'd worked towards that and knew the things that made me successful and knew those steps along the way. We'd figured it out over the last 10 years. In the wake of that injury, I had to reassess what success looked like for me and what a goal is that I could actually chase after. So a really finite goal, like I want to swim 52.8 seconds, was no longer possible because my environment had changed so much. So what was a different way of goal setting that I could still chase after without feeling like I was failing every single day? And that sort of shift in mentality that I took from that injury, which I still have today, has evolved throughout my career and into my life after sport as well. So, I mean, at that time, my goal shifted from I want to do 52.8 seconds to I want to be the kind of person that doesn't let injury defeat me. And then every day I can be as creative as I possibly can in that space. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I had to be getting faster every day, which I wasn't for a long time because it took quite a long time to find the solution. And when I moved out of the sport in 2021 after the Tokyo Olympics, I left the sport for 18 months and then I came back to the sport. I founded Earthletica and now I'm out of the sport again. But during that period, for all 3 of those decisions, the sort of guiding principle for me there was I'm the kind of person who relentlessly chases the things that they're passionate about. And that can apply to my business, which I am so passionate about. Getting plastic waste out of this industry it's something that I believe will change the legacy of how we look at clothing in the world. And it will be done and it needs to be done. And I'm so passionate about bringing that to life. But equally, that allowed me to go and compete at the 2024 Paris Olympics, because swimming is something I am also passionate about, and putting that relentless pursuit behind those passions is a goal that I can shift into different areas of my life. So I think the pivotal bit was having a big obstacle in the way that I couldn't just solve with metrics, and I had to find a different way to goal set, and that's helped me for my whole career.
Now, career advice. What is the best piece of career advice you've ever received?
This actually came from a coach very early on who said the only real failure is failure to start because you're afraid. And it's such a cliche piece of advice, but it's really useful for me because no failure is absolute other than the one that you never took. And when you think about going to the Olympic Games, the chances of doing that 0.0017%. That's not a very high probability there.
No.
But I was willing to go for that. I was willing to shoot towards that and know that I might miss. But it would have only felt like a failure if I had been too afraid to swing big and dream that big dream. And it's the same with my business. I've gone straight from a sporting environment to a startup environment, and I hear a lot about how unsuccessful businesses can be and how often businesses fail. And I know that this is a possibility, but that doesn't mean I should be unafraid to try, because I believe in what we're doing. I know that it's difficult, therefore I'll put in the groundwork. I've seen this happen before for myself. I've got a lot of evidence that even if the odds are against us, we can still do really great things. And my journey to the Olympics didn't look like what I thought it would look like. It looked completely different. And I also only thought I'd go to one Olympics, ended up at 4. So you never know. When you swing big, you never know.
Bronte, stay right where you are. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, you pick the questions. I'll see you soon. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with champion swimmer Bronte Campbell, the chief executive of Earthletica. Now, Bronte, in front of you is a cardboard box with about 20 random questions inside. For this next section, I'm going to ask you to pick out a question one at a time. Let's get started. Do you have a coping mechanism for high-stress situations? You must.
I have a lot of coping mechanisms for high-stress situations.
So what are your top 2 or 3?
Okay, breathing is definitely the most important. Practicing resonant breath when you're not in a stressful situation is incredibly important. So mine's 6 per minute. I mean, there's other ways to sort of calm your central nervous system. There's box breathing. There's some triangle breathing you can do. There's like that double inhale and long exhale. Honestly, with breath work, I would say try a lot of different things and find what works for you. Resonant breath works for me because it's something I can count, and counting is quite useful to bringing me in the moment as well.
So can you briefly explain the difference between resonant breathing and box breathing?
Okay, so resonant breathing is the number of breaths you would take per minute, equal in and equal out. And then box breathing is when you breathe in for, let's say, 4 or 5 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 or 5 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and you sort of go around like it's a box. And that's really good for like settling your central nervous system.
And are there any other breathing techniques you draw on during high-stress situations?
Another really good one, if you are getting really overwhelmed, you will actually see athletes do this behind the starting blocks or as they're walking onto a field, is your vagus nerve. If you whack in the middle of your chest really hard, normally with a fist, it resets your vagus nerve just for like a second. And all the panic signals that are coming from your body in a heightened sense of stress just get interrupted for a second. Breathing's really the number one thing. Then obviously there's the prep, which is all the visualization piece of it. But if you can get your breath work under control, lower your heart rate and let your body relax. Everyone thinks of your mind and body as separate things. They're not separate things. They're part of an entire ecosystem that works together. And when your body is sending distress signals to your brain decides to go offline. When your body is sending calming signals to your brain, the same thing happens. It allows your brain to come back online, your frontal cortex to fire again. So I've definitely been in very heightened situations before, but it's always useful to practice this stuff not in a heightened situation. I can't get into a stressful situation, start thinking about my breath. I have to practice it so that it becomes kind of a habit that when you're under stress, your body automatically seeks to try and regulate itself.
And do you also use breathing exercises when you're in stressful situations in the office?
Yes, the first signals always come from my body, and you can feel it. Your heart rate goes up and you get butterflies in your stomach and your breath starts to go. And that's a really good signal for me. It often means that there's conflict, and why am I feeling this conflict is the first question I have to ask myself. I normally feel things in my body before I'm even consciously aware of it. So that's a really good signal. And then if I'm going into something that I know is stressful, of course I get all these physical signals from my body. So it honestly doesn't matter whether it's the blocks of an Olympic final or a really intense conversation that I know I need to have. There's a level of anxiety about both of those things. And why is there? Because you don't necessarily know the outcome 100%. So they're actually a very similar feeling. So the same techniques definitely work in the office. I would say even in the office, it's probably even more important because you have to operate critical thinking in those moments. When I'm competing, I'm sort of relying on these like pre-programmed things that I've trained into my body over years. And your brain can go a little bit more offline and you can be a little bit more automatic. That's not the case if you're going into a situation where you have to engage in problem solving.
All right, Bronte, let's have another question. Now, this is interesting in your case. Are there any sacrifices that you have had to make in order to do your job, or I guess have a career in swimming?
What a question. Yes, there's definitely, for my career in swimming, absolutely. It was the number one thing in my life for a very long time, and everything came secondary to that. Everything, including my education, my social life, my dating life, that all came secondary to the one thing that I wanted to achieve in swimming. That is not sustainable for a very long time. I probably did that for about 5 years. And then I switched into a life of more balance because I would have not been able to continue like that. So now when it comes to my life outside of swimming, learning the things that I should give up for a job and learning the things that I shouldn't are very important. For instance, I'm getting married in 2 weeks. And initially I said I would work up until the day I left, and my co-founder said, you need to have 2 days before you get married where you're just chilling out and getting away from work.
So as a result of having made sacrifices for so long during your swimming career, are you really reluctant to make sacrifices for your work now? Does that sort of give you the heebie-jeebies?
No, it's the opposite. I'm used to making sacrifice. I'm used to fitting my life around my job or my career. I'm very used to that. So getting the things that are non-negotiables, like being able to get in water every day or every second day, knowing the things that I need to have in my life so that there's sustained success. And for me, there's sort of 3 things that you have to hit every day. So those 3 things are like mental stimulation, physical stimulation, and social stimulation. And social's the one that falls off very quickly, isn't it? And that's absolutely vital for me to succeed long term, is to make sure that I'm making time and space for all 3 of those things. And yeah, you might not hit them all every single day, but I do keep track of it. And if there's a whole week that's gone by where like the social and the physical one ends up, they can fall away really, really quickly, but they're really vital for me to keep succeeding.
Okay. I love that. Have another fish in the box. Okay. If you could relive one day in your career, which day would it be and why?
It's a very hard question. If I could relive one day, I wouldn't so much relive one particular day as a few moments. So some of the other work that I was doing while I was competing was around swimmer advocacy. And this leads into my work with Earthletica, and that I really know that I like having purpose-driven work. And the advocacy piece, there was a few times. There was the time that we got a pregnancy policy in place for the first time ever in swimming. It didn't exist until 3 or 4 years ago.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
I mean a policy that protects pregnant, particularly female athletes, also primary carers, if the male is the primary carer. So allows them to stay in a supportive environment, so stay within the sporting ecosystem even after they become pregnant, and support them through that till the next year when they would want to be competing again. So previously it was like, if you get pregnant, see ya.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can't compete when you're pregnant. So therefore, I mean, This may be getting the weeds a bit, but in swimming, you're not on a contract, you're not employed. You have to prove yourself every year at a benchmark meet, and you have to compete well at that meet. And if you do, then you will receive funding and performance support for another year. And if you don't, then you're off that. So as soon as you became pregnant, you fell off of all of that. So providing an actual avenue for women to stay in the sport, even if they want to start a family, that was a pretty big moment. And some of that advocacy work was around the mental health space and being able to bring swimmers into that performance and funding environment when they wouldn't have been able to because of the mental health things that they were dealing with. So there was a few times where like that individually being able to help those athletes was really, really meaningful to me. And knowing those moments that stood out to me through my swimming career, which you will notice are not the moments when I was winning gold medals. And to quote Cool Runnings, a gold medal is a wonderful thing, but if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. So finding the things in my life, the purpose, and in swimming, I found a purpose for the people and culture. And then in my business, it's a purpose for the planet and making something better for people.
I've now got one more question, which is, if for some reason you weren't the co-founder of Earthletica, what do you think you would be doing?
I love this question. I really want to go live overseas at some point. I have a dream of just owning a little Italian villa and cooking breakfast for people and living a very simple life. I don't know whether I'd ever actually do that, but something completely different and out in a vineyard somewhere in Italy would be very cool. Maybe that's in 30 or 40 years. That one will come true.
On that note, I wish you all the very best for your new life in Italy one day. And thank you so much for coming on and allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss. It's been really fantastic.
Sally, thank you so much.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Iona Rennie. Head of audio is Alex Gow, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini. See you next week.
The Australian Financial Review.